Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone to the June 16th meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Would you all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, for our announcements this morning, I would like to report on the closed session held on June 9th, 2009. An addendum, results of closed session. Okay, an addendum closed session was held pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9. A conference with legal counsel regarding the existing litigation with Michael and Michelle Nemi and versus the Calaveras County, resulting in no action taken. An addendum closed session was held pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9. A conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation, and there was no action taken on that item. All right. I would like to turn our attention to the consent agenda. Consent items, as everyone should know by now, are intended to be routine and non-controversial. They can be acted on by the board at one time and without discussion. However, any member of the staff or any member of the audience can pull an item off of the agenda. So I would ask for those considerations at this time.
Okay. So move on consent.
Second.
Anyone from the audience? If not, all in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are no opposing votes, and I feel fairly naked without my gavel. Can we have the gavel over here, in case I need it? Okay. Love to wrap that. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8. We have public comments. This is a time that anyone can come and speak on any subject not on the agenda. Whoops.
I just have a question from the peanut gallery first.
Yes.
It says 5 minutes per person and 15 minutes per topic. What if you had two separate things? Could you have 5 minutes, because you know what my thing is, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But if I did talk about that, what if I had another topic, complete and separate? Would that warrant another 5 minutes worth of blab?
Well, Bonnie, I don't want to be a nitpicker here, but I think that if you made it clear that you had two topics that you wanted to talk about, I would give you 5 minutes per topic. That's fine. Do you understand that that there's a latitude can be given at any time? So. It's been pointed out to me that this is not supposed to take place until 9:10. However, I'm going to take the latitude and have you identify yourself and tell us what you'd like to hear us or have us hear.
Good morning. My name is Peter N.K. My wife and I are residents of Tamwood Mobile Home Park on Highway 4, and I just have a brief statement here. At the time of our county's history, when county employees are being laid off and much-needed county programs are being scaled back due to lack of income, it has come to my attention that some businesses appear to think they are above the law and not required to file and pay appropriate county licensing fees like the rest of us. I'm speaking about Tanwood Mobile Home Park and Safari Mobile Home Park located in Avery, California on State Highway 4 in beautiful Calaveras County. They were both purchased in December of 2008, and here it is 6 months later, June of 2009, and they have yet to file for and operate under a simple county business license. The record shows that they have not paid the appropriate county fees or even applied for a business license. The new owners claim to be multimillionaires from the Napa region of California. I'd like this Board of Supervisors to investigate and apply the county laws equally to even rich people. There are established fees and procedures on the book for those who choose to be above the law, and I pray that you enforce them. And because of this presentation, we're actually losing our home at Tanwood Mobile Home Park because I'm whistleblowing, letting people know that they haven't paid taxes. That they haven't got their licensing taken care of both with the state of California and the county. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Joe Kelly. April 16, 2009, during the Planning Commission hearing, a statement regarding county road standards widening requirements was not necessary and was overburdensome. If during the June 4, 2009 Planning Commission hearing the subject property or project 2003-129 tentative parcel map was passed for continued processing with a county road widening standard left out, I request the Board of Supervisors place the item on its agenda for review and discussion. An explanation of how county ordinances can be ignored and how you intend to ignore SRA's fire safe regulations. SRA fire safe regulations became effective September 1991. The regulations were prepared and adopted for the purpose of establishing minimum wildfire protection standards in conjunction with building, construction, and development in state responsibility area. During a review and discussion with the Board of Supervisors, the county can provide justification for selective administration of its own rules and state rules. The state rules being Title 14, Natural Resources, Division 1.5, Department of Forestry, Chapter 7, Fire Protection, Subchapter 2, SRA Fire Safe Regulations, Articles 1 through 5. Those rules will provide you with cited authority, 4290, 4291 Public Resources Code. The other option is to request the Board of Forestry to review the Planning Commission's decision for consistency with state law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you information.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Morning, Mr. Fry.
Good morning, Chairman Thomas and members of the supervisors. I would like to make a couple of comments with regard to the item that was on the agenda last week with the Sheriff's Department regarding services, medical services for the jail. I appreciate the board taking the position to shop locally and have Mark Twain submit their plan, and hopefully we will be utilizing their services. I could tell by what I read in the newspaper that it was a little bit exciting. Second, but not least, I would like to commend Bob Lawton for his insight, his fortitude, his support, his preparation of the budget, his willingness to take 10% out of his salary. You are fortunate. I know you all know this, that you are fortunate. Our county is fortunate to have just this gentleman, the caliber of gentleman we have as our county administrative officer. In reading this morning's newspaper regarding the board chair, CIO clash with sheriff over budget cuts, thank you, Chairman Thomas, for all of your comments. You and I don't always agree on issues, and that's fine. It's healthy. It's all part of the process. But I commend you for your stand, your support that you have shared. And I would like to leave you all with this quote. I'm here in uniform today because I'm in the honor guard for the VFW in Sonora. And I'm the chaplain for the honor guard, and we're doing a funeral this morning. But I wanted to stop by and pick up a couple letters because I'm running for city council and I'm being interviewed this afternoon. And I'd like to leave you, everybody in this room, with this quote from Henry Ford. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. And working together is success. I hope you continue to do that as members of the board. and the people of Calaveras County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board this morning?
Good morning. My name's Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs. I'm here to talk about a situation that is going to come to pass very soon. I got back from the board meeting last week and I found that the road department had come through and cut my shade trees, among other things, but they're going to overlay Double Springs Road. Double Springs Road it's a wagon trail. And I know it's been a project on the books for months and it's going to put the road department to work for a while, but after you see what they've done to my trees, you don't want them to work. These guys massacred my trees, and they're going to make Double Springs Road into the freeway that they're already using it for, to cut off from the main highway. If you come from Oak Hill, you go down Double Springs, you can go 70 miles an hour. And there's already potholes because it is an old wagon trail. It's probably the one historic road that still remains that isn't part of the highway anymore. It's dangerous. There's a lot of curves on it, and people are already going 60, 70 miles an hour. I used to worry about the little old ladies on the block. I'd make them red jackets so they would be seen. But now I'm the little old lady. I'm going to be out there on the road, and it's like, I don't know what it would take to get a stop sign at the end of Double Springs to slow down traffic, or a reasonable speed limit, like 35, 40 miles an hour. We've got lots of animals I've picked up on the road, my friends, but now I've got a two-legged friend that walks the road and cannot be contained. And I don't want you to pick up the paper that says tragedy on Double Springs Road and you know who's going to be hit. Somebody very unaware. So it's just an issue, and if you have any input, I'd sure appreciate it, because it's a danger waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. Mr. Moore.
My name is Will Moore. I live in Rancho Calaveras, but I want to reaffirm what this lady just said. I don't know her, but that is a dangerous cutoff. It's a shortcut that doesn't save any distance or time. And I make a lot of trips from Valley Springs to McCollum Hill, and I used to take that road. But after I found out how dangerous it really is, I go around the other way. So I don't know what you guys can do about it, but if you can help this lady out, it'd be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Hi, my name's Terry Baker, and I'm here to talk about an ongoing noise nuisance problem that we have in our neighborhood, and I'm here on behalf of the whole neighborhood and subdivision. This is about the case of the people of State of California versus Carolyn Redmond, and on this top page, this is a letter from their attorney, Blair White, and this is their appeal after she was found guilty. An appeal in a limited jurisdictional criminal case must be filed within 30 days. This was filed about 70 days, and they did not let it go. The next page is our first complaint, which we turned in back in 307, and when I made this complaint, the dispatcher from the sheriff department could hear, he thought he was hearing peacocks on the telephone in the background. And they're not peacocks, they're just roosters from an illegal commercial agricultural cock ranch operation. And if you notice, none of these have ever been made out to David Redmond, just Carolyn Redmond. The next one is another complaint, and down at the bottom, we had a petition, and they said they would move the roosters or remove them, and they would reduce the numbers. At this time, they had about 20 to 25, and they said they would reduce them. They didn't, so they got a citation. The following one, after they went to court and got the citation and their appeal was denied, they were never to be cited again. And on the next card it says, to hold off on citing them a third time, the district attorney may be getting involved at this time. Counsel states that DA will be handling ordinance changes. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, the next one is from my neighbor. The last one was from my neighbor. This next one here is County Council recommended that RP, which is me, make a new complaint in this matter. For County Council to contact District Attorney. The DA will be handling and making ordinance changes and may remove Animal Services from having to deal with it, and Ag Department making changes. The following one is Animal Control is saying they are not going to, they're not involved in this case anymore. It's been referred to the Ag Department. Well, I have a problem with that, because if you go back to the first page, this is a limited jurisdictional criminal matter, and it shouldn't be handled by Mary Mutz in the Ag Department. She has already been found guilty. She did not get her appeal through, and it shouldn't be turned over to the Ag. It's a criminal matter. The next page is a letter from Beverly Vieira, which is another person on the complaint. And these are just a few of the complaints that we have turned in. This isn't all of them. Several complaints have been previously reported with no action taken. Most recent complaint I filed was on March 10th of 2009. Now, today's date, she also writes, is March 31st, and I have not yet to hear a response. I am concerned that there is no intention to honor my request. And that's from Beverly Vieira. The following one is one that I turned in that had over 150 birds and roosters, and they turned it in as a one dog barking. And they just didn't even make a response or anything, because now we have become the nuisance, and the people who have been the nuisance for the last 4 years are not a nuisance anymore. The next page is my complaint on the dog barking.
Mr. Baker, I want to remind you, as I often do, that your time is running close. But 15 more seconds, please.
5 minutes a week is all I ask. Now,
it
has come to our attention that the written complaint on 317 was mishandled. Please rectify this error. Please consider this letter as an additional repeated and legitimate complaint, also as the situation continues. And the situation does continue, and we would just like for somebody to go out and take care of it, because she is still in violation. This is day number 583.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Yes, sir.
I said thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wishing to address the board this morning? All right. Seeing no one, we will proceed to item number 9. This is a discussion and possible action regarding the annual approval of a minute order incorporating changes to the county investment policy and guidelines for fiscal year 2009-2010.
Good morning. Lynette Norfolk, Treasurer Tax Collector. This is an annual event, basically. The government code and the county investment policy requires that it be reviewed every year, 120 days before the end of the fiscal year, to ensure consistency. There's minor changes this year. The one I wanted to point out, which in each of your copies there, has to do with the, I guess, new item for investment called the Temporary Liquidity Guarantee Program, whereas they are corporates that are issued by companies, but they have FDIC insurance on them. So I felt it prudent that we put that into the investment policy because it is something that's recommended, and we have been purchasing because they are a good investment based on our financial advisors, our investment advisors. So with that, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Not a question, but just a compliment. I really appreciate the format that you deliver this in. I hope that you'll share that with others who present revised documents. It's very easy to tell from this what's new, what's being deleted, and very helpful in this board packet. So other department heads that may be listening, if you want to see the perfect format for this, talk to Lynette.
Thank you.
Sounded like a motion for approval to me.
That is a motion for approval, yes, in a roundabout way.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette.
I'll talk to some of you later, maybe this afternoon, on the other items that I think Mr. Walensky and Russ have brought up
Yep.
to me. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing an expenditure contract not to exceed $58,725 between the County of Calaveras and Schneider Learning Services, under which Schneider Learning Services would provide learning disability evaluations for CalWorks welfare to work participants in Calaveras County for the period of July 1st, 2009 through June 30th, 2009. And Mary Sawicki is here to tell us all about this. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. We recently had an RFP process putting these particular services out to bid. They're for evaluation of our CalWorks clients who appear during their regular evaluation to have some learning disabilities. This year, Mr. Schneider, in his proposal, proposed 3 levels or tiers of services, the lowest level being Tier 1, which is the majority of the folks that we do have receive this service. There's a Tier 2, which is for moderate learning disabilities, and then he added this year a Tier 3 for those with significant learning disabilities. These particular tests assist our employment and training workers in evaluating people's potential for training, as well as learning what we need to do in order to make them successful, productive citizens of our county. There was only the one bid, Mr. Schneider. He's been performing these services for us on an ongoing basis. We therefore, and this is for a 3-year contract. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I would like to correct the way that was presented in the agenda. It was a 1-year contract. The staff report clearly says that it's a 3-year contract.
Yes, it is.
So this would be, it's a $58,000 contract, $19,500.
0 years.
$19,575 per year.
That is correct.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of this item. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none opposed, so the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mary.
Okay.
All right, moving on to item number 11. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing an expenditure contract not to exceed $250,000 between the County of Calaveras and the Resource Connection for the provision of CalWorks Stage 1 child care services for the period July 1, 2009 through June 30th, 2010. Okay, Mary, this is another one of yours. Go ahead.
Yes. The Resource Connection has been providing child care services for our county for approximately 28 years. They do an excellent job of it. We share this particular service with the County Office of Ed, who also provides funding for both the referral process as well as the ongoing payments for child care. This is particularly, again, for our clients, our cache clients who have a work activity or training responsibility. It covers roughly about 45 to 50 children per month presently, and an expenditure of slightly under $20,000 a month. We are asking your approval to renew the contract for 1 year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this proposal. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion passes unanimously. Yes.
This is going to be an hour. And this is going to be a short term.
That's...
Yeah.
What's this on the mental health board? Is it here already?
Okay. Mr. Lawton?
Sure.
We have agenda item 12, which is a presentation on the adult detention facility. Do we have any idea how long that would be with the question?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend, if the department doesn't mind, that we take up the other matters, take up the items 13 and 14 before we begin the presentation. I think it's going to be a comprehensive presentation. There'll be questions, no doubt, and I think you'd want to leave adequate time for that. So my suggestion would be take the other items, advance the other items on the agenda.
Well, we can't do 14 till 10 o'clock, so we could do 13 now and float it.
Float it?
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Maybe you'll take half an hour on 13 and everything will be
We could try.
Please.
All right. We've after that deliberation, the chair is going to make a decision here that we will move item 13 ahead of 12, and with this item 13 now is a discussion and possible action regarding authorizing the allocation of Federal Forest Reserve Title III funds for 2007 in the amount of $52,715.75 and for 2008 in the amount of $47,542. Shirley.
Good morning, Shirley Ryan, Assistant CAO. Before you is the annual or allocation of Title III funds. This is the Secure and Rural Schools Act that was originally set to end in 2006. It was reauthorized for a year, and then it's been reauthorized for 5 years. We have received the funding for 07 and 08, and the totals, and as a result, we sent out the information to the past community organizations that have requested funds under the Title III Act. There were some changes in the most recent reauthorization, and initially we thought we were going to have to change the process a little bit, but because we received a total of under $350,000, we're able to allocate up to 15% of Federal Forest Reserve money to Title III. We're not limited to the 7% to Title III and 8% to Title IV, to Title II. We received requests from 3 organizations, the Sheriff's Department Search and Rescue, the County Office of Education for their ongoing program, and their Calaveras Foothills Fire Safe Council. There is sufficient money to meet all requests if the board so chooses, with about $217 left over, I think it was. And your board package should include the proposals from each of the entities, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have questions. I do have a suggestion.
Okay.
I'd like to take the $216 and move it to the Office of Education, because over the last few years when the Office of Education has worked with the Fire Safe Council and Search and Rescue, and they had been the only ones, and they had worked with them. And I just think for $217, we don't want to leave it. I would like to give it to the Office of Education as a bonus.
There's two other points I would like to make before we go
Don't spend it all in
on.
one place, though.
There are two other comments I would like to make. One is the budget adjustment that is included in the board packet does not need to be acted on. It was part of the technical adjustments that made here. When I had looked at the account summaries, those budget adjustments hadn't been made about 2 weeks ago. They have since been made, so when I saw the zeros, I made the budget adjustment accordingly. But that has been taken care of. You do not need to do the budget adjustment. The other issue is one of the submissions under the Sheriff's Department is for $2,000 for the Hug a Tree and Survive at Big Tree State Park. The board may or may not want to put a condition on that should the state park close.
Well, Shirley, if we don't spend it all, we carry it forward to the coming year. Is that correct? So I don't think there's we need to be in a panic to make sure we spend every last penny. It seems to me it would be a wise idea to carry a little bit forward. So I don't mind having a little bit in the account. If the sheriff's money is not spent because the park is closed, then I think that should be carried forward also. I mean, it's always, we're in fairly uncertain times, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little bit of a carryover in funds in an account like this, rolling over into the coming year. Because, quite frankly, as I put in the record before, my highest priority basically is the Sheriff's Department, and if there were to be a cut in funding, then we could use the carryover funds to help with the search and rescue effort.
The Federal Forest Reserve Title III has limited down the uses, as I outlined in my board packet, to very specific areas. And though you can carry it over, and we will be getting an allocation probably around the same amount, about $45,000 over the next 2 years. But you're certainly the board certainly has the prerogative to carry that $2,000 over should the state park close and the funds not be spent as allocated.
I mean, I'm inclined to just support what's presented. I'm not in fear of a carryover balance to be allocated next year. So.
Are you amenable to Supervisor Callaway's suggestion as the allocation of the 216?
I would just leave it here and roll it over.
Okay.
Okay, any other board comments?
I'll move it be approved as presented.
I think there may be others that want to talk on this item, so.
Excuse me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Michael Walker, Undersheriff. I was just going to comment on the Hug a Tree program. If the state parks do close, that program would continue to be provided to the schools and at community events, so it would still be, the money would be expended in the Hug a Tree program.
Any other comments from the board?
Well, I'll just weigh in on the apparent controversy of the 216 and support Supervisor Callaway's thoughts on it, because I do believe that the district did compromise in the past and is deserving of any excess funds in this round.
Okay. I see another gentleman that wants to talk on this subject. Please come forward and identify yourself.
Sure. Bill Fullerton, Calvers Foothills Fire Safe Council. I just want to bring up under Tom Tryan's message under the excess funds that are going to be available. If you'll note in our proposal, we're also prepared to give the Office of Education $20,000 of their $37,000 towards the program. So there's also an extra $20,000 there that could be allocated till next year. We've done this in the past. If you see in our proposal, this will be a total of $56,000 we've spent on the Office of Education program.
Okay. Do I understand that you're proposing to take $20,000 of your $36,000?
No. We offered to spend $20,000 of our project dollars to help that program. Exactly. So if their $37,000 proposal, we're paying for $20,000 of that. Not out of our Title III monies, out of our project dollars. Money that's already been allocated for projects. And John Brophy's Office of Education already knows that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Morning, Mr. Brophy.
Good morning. John Brophy, County Superintendent of Schools. And actually, Bill and I have worked very well together the last several years on this, but I think I have to disagree with him on this one. The $37,000 proposal I wrote was for the Secure Rural Schools Forest money. And on top of that, if they had funds to give us, we would do more work. So I think you were saying that year 20 was part of our 37, it would actually be on top of that. Because in the past, as Marita mentioned, we reduced our request, and then the Fire Safe Council kind of made it up for us by giving us contracts to do work for them. So I didn't know if that would be available this year or not, so I wrote this $37,000 proposal for the Forest Reserve money, and anything extra we can do for Bill would be out of their funds. So. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Brophy? Okay, thank you very much, John. Okay, anyone else wishing to comment on this item? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a potential motion.
There is a motion.
I want to amend the motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the item as recommended by staff.
I'm sorry. Okay, approve as recommended. Do we have a second? Okay, 5 minutes is run on that one. So the motion fails for failure of a second. Do I have an alternate motion?
I make a motion that we approve the recommendation of staff with the $216.75 going to the Office of Education in recognition of the cooperation that they've extended over the last few years of this program.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded as stated. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion passes on a 4-1 vote.
We only lasted 10 minutes on that one.
You should have argued more, Tom.
Well, you guys are the ones that changed it. I didn't.
Okay. God, I hate this.
You can't move it.
Can we?
Take a brief recess. I think it's set up.
Okay. Mr. Lawton, I thought that some time ago we had a suggestion that we sort of put broader time ranges on these items. It is cumbersome that we're faced with this situation where some of us feel like we should go forward and some of us feel like we should adhere to the stated time schedule.
Is it not within the board's prerogative to alter times within certain agenda framework?
In prospectively, absolutely, and you could direct the board clerk to prepare the agenda in any way you wish. But as far as in the immediate case, I would defer to county council. What would like to do?
I think you have to stick with the notice that was given. People may rely on the time schedule and the agenda to be here. So, sorry.
If you want to broaden them, that's fine, but I don't think you've got to be careful about taking something before it's time that people are wanting to come in or relying on that.
Well, I would draw your attention to the fact that the item that we're discussing here is an appointment of an applicant to serve on the mental health board, and if somebody has scheduled closely their time to come in and object to that, I mean, that would be highly unlikely. But anyway, I guess county council has rendered his decision or his recommendation. So I would recommend that we just take a 15-minute break, and we will talk about
15.
Well, let's take a.
I think we're talking about setup time for item number 13.
Item number 12.
Excuse me, number 12.
Well, it doesn't take 15 minutes, does it?
Right, so we can do that in 5.
3-minute recess.
What? No, we can always just suspend the sheriff's issue and take up 14 if somebody thinks they need to be out of here.
But, Tom, that is the issue. Item number 14 is scheduled for 10 o'clock. It is not yet 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but you can, when we get to 10, we can suspend what we're doing and take it up.
If you want.
If I want to.
Let's just do a 3-minute recess, let them set up.
Yeah, that's
They're all waiting. We're waiting. It's on the agenda for 9:30. Let's just move on it.
Okay. As Vice Chair Callaway has suggested, let's just take a 3-minute recess. Have you gentlemen get your computer program all set up, and we'll be hearing this item in 3 minutes. Getting back to order. Good morning, Captain Ballard.
Good morning, sir.
This is item number 12, and it says on the agenda that this is discussion and possible action regarding the status update for adult detention facility. This is not scheduled for any board action. This is just an informational report on the status of the jail design. So thank you very much, Captain Ballard.
All right. Ed Ballard with the Sheriff's Department. If you remember back when you adopted a resolution to hire our architect, PSA Dewberry, several board members requested a study session on the staffing and operational costs for the jail. So we'll get started with, obviously you know me, I decided that I wanted to do a little history so you all know or remember how we got to where we're at. The jail was built in 1963 with a capacity of 45 inmates. In 1986 was the first time anything was done to the jail. There was a construction of an exercise yard. The inmate worker and a remodeling of an old inmate workers area to female housing. That got separated. It's confusing me. Sorry about that. 1986, Sheriff Claude Ballard gave a presentation to the board the need to start thinking about a new jail. 1992, we installed an automatic transfer switch on the emergency generator. There's a couple other things. It's cutting off at the bottom. I apologize for that. Emergency generator improvement, improvement in the visiting area, the kitchen, the laundry. It's one we put in our multi-purpose room and a medical examination room, in addition of an exercise yard. In 1992, the court ordered a capacity limit of 55 inmates to the jail. In 1997, a gate was added to the pedestrian sally port. An existing office was converted to a 2-person cell. That office used to be our exam room. After they done a new medical, then we converted that over to a 2-person cell. In 1999, we constructed the 8-bed maximum security housing wing. In 1999, as a result of the expansion and construction of the office conversion, a court order capacity increased to 65 inmates, and that's where we've been held ever since 1999. We've been unable to add any new beds. In 2000, first grand jury report came out that we needed to vigorously pursue getting us a new jail. In 2000, we applied for a grant to build a 99-bed facility. We were unsuccessful in that. In 2007, the board approved a contract with TRG Consulting for architectural programming and conceptual design of a new adult detention facility in the Sheriff's Administration Building. In 2007, Board of Supervisors approved a local bond measure for the construction of adult detention facility, the Sheriff's Administration Building, and also in 2007 that bond measure passed. In 2008, the board authorized the sheriff to apply for AB 900 local jail funding grant. Also in 2008, we submitted the grant to CSA for that funding. Also in 2008, the Sheriff's Department did a staffing and operations study before this board. And also in 2008, the board approved a siting agreement with CDCR, which was part of the AB 900 grant funding application. In 2008, the board authorized the bonds for Measure J to be sold. 2008, we hired Kitchell to do the project management services. And in 2009, May of this year, we hired PSA Dewberry for our architectural and engineering services. And that's kind of a short and brief where we started and how we got here. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about, give you an overview of the schedule today, and Art with Ketchel will take care of that. So, Art?
Good morning. I'm Arthur Lytle, Senior Project Manager with Kitchell. The new adult detention facility master schedule that we put together has 6 phases to it. Pre-design engineering, 30% design documents, 50% design documents, 100% design documents, bidding, and construction. We are presently nearing the completion of the first phase, which is the pre-design engineering, which will be complete July 8th. The pre-design engineering phase is a discovery, investigation, and a needs phase that brings all the information together on what is existing here in the government complex in the way of infrastructure, as well as what we need to do to move that infrastructure up to the site. We're also looking into and developing an architectural program. The PSA Dewberry and Chin Planning will talk about a little later. And we're putting together a cost estimate. All these will be assembled and submitted on July 8th for review. The cost estimate, which will be a unit price-based cost estimate, is the first cost estimate on construction costs that we will be seeing. Presently, our budget has been assembled based on a 87,000 square foot jail and a 48,000 square foot administration building. We presently, after going through the architectural programming and starting the conceptual part of the pre-engineering phase, are at 87,081 square feet for the jail and 39,400 square feet for the administration building. Again, our budget for this project is $56,954,639. It's a tight budget. With the reduced square footage, I'm confident that we are within our budget, but it is still a tight budget. We plan on coming back to the board the tail end of July and presenting the conceptual design and the beginning of this schematic design, which starts July 9th. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Captain Ballard.
All right, to get to where we're at, it's been a long haul for the Sheriff's Department. I've been assigned to the project for over the last 2 years. As part of my assignment to the project, we have a transition team based on our application for AB 900 funding, based on our program, and what we want to do in this county to improve our jail environment and hopefully facilitate education to inmates and all the things to stop recidivism. Our transition team came up with this mission statement. This is what we're striving towards while we build this new jail. If you'd like me to read it to you, I will. Otherwise...
No, we can do that. Thank you.
All right. Okay, next up be Karen from Chin Planning. She's part of the PSA Dewberry team to help us work on establishing our programming, validating our programming, and is helping us in the process of designing and meeting our needs for the new jail.
Thank you. Well, Captain Ballard provided a very good overview of where you've gotten to date, but I just wanted to say that I took a look at some of the documents that had been done in previous studies, and this is a very short overview of just some of the facts that I picked out before we began the process of really refining the facility program document and then developing the important staffing plan that goes along with the new jail facility. So this just taking a look at the history that the court-ordered cap, at least in the 2007 report, was 65 inmates, and your average daily population certainly has always been exceeding that, and I'm going to show some detailed tables on that. Also, that the jail is primarily made up of felony offenders. It's been averaging about 77 felons and 1 misdemeanor. So with your limited jail capacity, you have focused on felony offenders in the jail. The third bullet down is a troubling one, that 54% re-arrest rate, because there has been so many early releases as a result of the cap on the facility. There's a high percent of return inmates to the facility that have been released early. Only one small space is available for programming in your existing jail, and certainly there's, in terms of new generation facilities, being able to have segregation of inmates and some ability to have both segregation cells and various levels of housing for your maximum security inmates has not been possible in your limited capacity. At the bottom, the last bullet point, I think it's very important that because you've had this limited capacity, there are several programs that have been shown nationally to be really good programs that will help relieve, even if you have a new jail, your jail capacity, and that is for the appropriate offenders to have work release, which you do have a work release program right now, electronic monitoring, and this is the array of other alternative programs. So here in Calaveras County, you have not just the jail, but you do have other alternatives, which is important for now, especially with your limited capacity, but even as you move into a new jail facility, if offenders can be appropriately supervised in the community, that will be something to maintain so you can manage that population in the new jail in the future. What I did take a look at, let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to go through a series of some slides because the 2007 report, well, certainly we came into it a little bit dated. I wanted to look at more recent trend data. And also just delve a little bit deeper and look at some comparative data of how Calaveras County stacks against other counties of similar size. So the first few slides, this just takes a look at what's been happening in crime and arrest in the county. And as you can see from this slide, the reported crime in the county has actually gone down about 13% in the period 1999 through the end of 2006. And when I say reported crime, nationally reported UCR crime is only the 7 index most serious crimes, which is really the minority of crimes that are committed in America. But that's all that's reported uniformly to UCR. Now, when you get to look at all arrests and what's happened in Calaveras County when you add felony and misdemeanor arrests, your arrests have increased by about 20%, a pretty substantial increase in the total number of arrests in this county over the last 6 to 8 year time frame. This just takes a look at, for the most recent reported data, which is 2006 in UCR, what are people arrested for here in Calaveras County. And I think it's going to be an important thread as we look at the jail and the jail population. And not surprisingly, because it's very similar across America, 50% of the people that are arrested in Calaveras County are arrested for alcohol or alcohol and drug-related offenses. And of the minority that are arrested for felony arrests, most of those here in this county are for assault. I mean, not murder, rape, robbery, but assault is the vast majority of the felony arrests that are made. This slide takes a look at your average daily population, which, once again, the bullet here says you've got the capacity of 65 inmates, but you have exceeded 65 inmates on an average basis since 2001, and in fact you had as many as 85 inmates in May of 2003. So the capacity at the jail has consistently exceeded the court-ordered capacity. This slide just takes a look at what's happened to admissions to the jail. And your average monthly admissions have grown at about 4.5% per year between 2001 and 2008. And you've been averaging about 200 to 240 inmates per month coming into the jail facility. A couple of other profile pieces on admissions to the jail that I think are important, and I don't have the bullets up there, but 73% of the population admitted to the jail has regular use of alcohol and drugs. That goes back to that bullet of what people are arrested for. But one thing that does stand out in Calaveras County, and look at some of the profile data, is there's also a very high percentage of inmates, at about 60% in 2005, that were admitted to the jail were either because of possession of methamphetamine or addiction to methamphetamine. It's very high. It's about 66%, and that was self-reported data of inmates admitted to the jail. That compares nationally to about 20%. So certainly the issue of methamphetamine addiction here in Calaveras County is contributing to your jail population and your recidivism rate. This is the average length of stay. Well, it's certainly a jail population every day is a function of how many people you put in and how long you keep them. Well, the average length of stay in Calaveras County has remained constant at about 10 to 12 days. And the reason for that average length of stay being short, and I'm going to show you some comparative information, is because, once again, of having to do the early releases to try to maintain at least close to what that quarter capacity is. But it's been averaging about 10 to 12 days per average length of stay. And when I say average length of stay, that means those that are booked in and booked out immediately, as well as the sentenced offenders that stay longer, but that's the overall average length of stay. Because you have a court-order cap, and you may look at some trends that are artificially low because of having to keep that or try to maintain somewhere near the level of the court-order capacity, I also took a look at what's been happening in the courts, and because that would be a better indication of what potentially would be happening in the jail if you had the capacity. And here what you can see on this slide is in terms of both felony and misdemeanor filings have increased. Felony filings have increased about 10% per year, and misdemeanor filings have increased about 2.5% per year. So even though the jail population is maintained at 70 to 75 inmates on average, because of that cap, the workload coming from the court has increased pretty substantially. This was just a summary slide of the inmate population projections that were in your 2007 report that led to the approval and moving forward on the jail project. So this coming into this project, the 240 capacity takes a look at this population projections, making assumptions about low, medium, and average daily population through 2040, which is, I believe, what made this board decide to move forward and develop the 240-bed jail facility. This table makes a comparison of where does Calaveras County stand compared to other similar-sized counties. And what you can see here, and it's not surprising, is the incarceration rate. In other words, the number of inmates housed in the jail, or average daily population in the jail per 1,000 county residents, is substantially below all the comparison counties. It's 1.62 here, and you can see 2.2, 2.4 inmates incarcerated per 1,000 population, and it's lower here in Calaveras County, certainly because this is the only county on this comparison table that has the court-order capacity. What you also can see here is your average length of stay. There's one county that has a lower average length of stay, but once again, going back to that having to move inmates through the jail to try to stay close to the cap, your average length of stay is also lower than comparison counties. One area, the per diem cost, and your current per diem cost for the jail is about $82 per day. That's actually lower than if you add up those 6 counties and divide it. It's about $91 per day on average for those counties, and so Calaveras County is slightly below that in terms of their per diem cost for the jail facility. That's the current jail facility. That data is looked at and analyzed, and then moving into developing the spatial program for the jail to build on what had been done 2 years ago. This table shows the end result of several workshops in terms of when you say a 240-bed jail, we certainly need to break that down between both the state-funded beds as well as the county-funded beds. And what this table reflects is the program that has been completed and will then be moving on to conceptual design is for 2 48-bed housing units, and those are each made up of 24 double cells. Then also 2 40-bed dormitory units. And then finally, to be able to account for some smaller populations such as female offenders and as well as some maximum security inmates, which you don't have that capability right now, we've developed 2 24-bed units, which are comprised of 2 12 double-bedded units, as well as 2 8-bed single-cell units, so you can have some of your maximum security or most problematic inmates housed in that appropriate environment for a total capacity of 240 beds. And this table just summarizes it. Arthur just mentioned the 87,000 or 87,100 gross square feet of space proposed for the new jail facility, and that is to incorporate, certainly it's a full-service jail, all the administrative components, security operations, the programs and services that are required for this population, and then the bottom is the housing, which I just summarized, but along the side you see the actual square footage, and then adding on the grossing factor for the building, and you're at 87,100 square feet for the jail facility. The Sheriff's Administration Emergency Operations Center program, as Art also mentioned, is 39,400 square feet, and that's composed of all the public lobby and public functions related to the Sheriff's Department, all of the Operations Bureau, including Patrol Division, investigations, dispatch and evidence, the actual Emergency Operations Center, and then some space that's required for vehicles, both interior and exterior, and the parentheses are for the exterior bills. That's not built space, but you do need to have some built space for vehicle evidence processing and some other vehicles that will need to be inside of the facility, and that square footage is 39,400 square feet. Well, now to talk about staffing, because certainly as staggering as your capital cost will be for the facility, the operational cost will go on and on year after year. So this is a staffing estimate that's been prepared for the new jail facility. In all honesty, when I developed the first staffing plan and sent it to the Sheriff's Department based on the 240...
I want to apologize. Is it possible to move the projector a little bit closer? We don't need that area on the left. We don't have handouts. The screen is pretty much illegible from here. It would be helpful as you describe it for us to be able to read this. To be able to just moving it closer is going to...
Need to pull it back.
Yeah, sorry, whatever.
Move the table.
Or zoom the computer some way to...
All you have to do is this in.
Yeah, that works.
It's getting better.
That's better. Yeah, otherwise it's just a smudge.
Karen, when you're completed with this, do you have printed versions of this available for the board?
We do not. We will be sending it out electronically.
Okay.
Changes all the way up to the last minute.
Okay. While we had this little interruption, I have a question about what is meant by the grossing factor, that 20% grossing factor.
Yeah, I'm sorry to try to summarize so much, and please ask any questions. I'm trying to go through it quickly, but the grossing factor means that when you develop a facility program, I develop and call out what I call the net spaces. Like on this room, it'd be inside wall to inside wall. So that's just how big the board of supervisors meeting room would be. But then when you actually build the space, we need to build all the hallways to get out and to the spaces in between. And so factors have to be added because that's built space to get between components in a building. And then ultimately, when you develop the building, the last grossing factor is that major mechanical systems, the wall thickness, elevator shafts, which is stuff that is also built space. So in developing a spatial program, first you call out the net spaces, then you add a space for circulation, and then ultimately you add a grossing factor to account for the other built space, once again, which is the major corridors in the building, the elevator space, wall thickness, that sort of thing. So if I just said that a meeting room is going to be 1,000 square feet, you would have to build more than that and apply grossing factors so that you could, the exact square footage you had to construct. So the 87,000 gross square feet, all of that has been added in. All the circulation space has been added in.
Okay, but it kind of popped off the page there that the grossing factor, the bottom line was 20%. That's you had, in your experience in building these facilities, that's actually what it takes is an extra fifth of space for the exterior walls and such?
Well, I'm going to answer that, and if any of the architects in the group want to come up and answer beyond that, but quite frankly, when I'm developing a program before I know a site, sometimes I use as much as 22 to 24% to add on that space to make sure that when you lock into a number and then it goes into design, that we aren't coming up short on square footage. I don't know, Jerry, if you want to add anything to that, but that is very much standard.
It's not just the exterior walls, it's all the interior walls, the circulation, the main public lobbies, your mechanical spaces, stairways, elevator shafts, that's not all part of your net square footage.
Okay.
So that 20% is a pretty good number.
All right. Thank you.
Karen, one other, I've got just a couple of questions about capacity, if we could. So a couple of slides ago, you showed us the 240 beds and how they'd be allocated. There. Now, how many of those beds, once you've set aside space, say, for classification, how many of those beds would actually be available? You've got a 240-bed facility. It's really meant to serve on a regular basis 240 inmates or 220 inmates aligned for classification and segregation. But what's the real number on that?
The actual number, I'm not sure I follow.
A 240-bed facility, if you had 240 inmates in a 240-bed facility, is it 100% capacity, or is it really kind of overcrowded because you need space set aside for other purposes?
I typically would say in a jail you would set aside 10 to 15% of your capacity for what I call peaking and classification factors. In other words, if you're saying your average daily population is 240, that's the average. You need additional beds to be able to have for peaking.
So for a 240-bed jail, it can comfortably handle an average daily population of?
Roughly 220.
Okay. And can we go back? And could we go back? There's another couple of slides that showed the needs assessment. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So for 2010, we have a low, medium, average, and daily high population. These are county commitments. So what would be what size facility would be required then to serve the 148 average daily population? Is it 160? You need 160 beds to do the 148. Is that the idea?
Something's in that neighborhood, right? Because not only to account for the peaks, but then once again, if you classification in the jail, if you have opposing gang members, if you have males, females, inmates that need to be in protective custody or other issues, you can't always just put them. Even if you have a 48-bed housing unit, there will be reasons why you've got to have other places to put certain inmates.
You need that slack space. Okay, so for 160 beds, you can comfortably handle the 148 inmates that we're projected to need. Exactly. Thank you.
Right. I had one question on this chart, actually. Glad you stopped by it again. What were the projections? What was the population projection base for this, and does it correlate with those populations, or are there other factors that come into this expectation?
Well, I wanted to make clear on this table, if you look at the source, I didn't develop this table. I pulled this out of your 2007 report that was developed to make the decision to move forward with the jail. So I don't, I wanted to put it up there as a reminder, but I did not develop this projection.
But you did look at the justice system data. I mean, I know that you're not the source of this, but is it something that you would say, yes, it's consistent with what, the information I looked at over here is consistent with the conclusions reached by this other entity, and therefore I'm comfortable using it.
The reason I'm asking, actually, is that there have been some different trend lines since 2006 and when the data was drawn, early 2007. Our growth is dropped off along with a number of other rural counties, and I'm just wondering whether we've...
You mean your general county population is what you're talking about,
Yes.
Well, that's why I did look at those other trends, because what hasn't dropped off is you have an increase in the number of arrests in this county, you have a substantial increase in felony filings in this county, and certainly a very serious issue as it relates to drug and alcohol addiction in the community that fuels your jail population. So yes, these numbers, I think, are excellent planning numbers to look at the future. I do think it will be important, as I mentioned on an earlier slide, to maintain the kind of other alternative programs you currently have in place, and not say when you open a new jail, now we don't need that work alternative, or we don't need to do electronic monitoring, because those alternatives that have been put in place are much less costly, and they're more appropriate for many of the offenders. So yes, this projection, and took a look at it, and that's why I did update the trends to take a look, because even if there has certainly been a slowdown in the economy in the last year, the demands on the jail in terms of arrests and filings and things I've looked at, that has not decreased in this community in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry that you can't read this, and as I mentioned, this will all be sent to you electronically to study and memorize. But I said that this total staffing plan, and this is shown by shift, because of course in a jail you've got to maintain it 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and then relief, because a correctional officer position, for example, in a housing unit, you have to hire more positions if you've got someone in there 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and then for the total staff. And the total staffing plan here is 50.1 staff. And there's two things I want to say about that. One, it reflects an indirect supervision staffing model, which means more of remote supervision of inmates in the housing area. It's certainly safe and sound operation of the facility, but does not reflect a direct supervision, and I'm going to expand on that in a minute. And also I'd like to say that when I developed the preliminary staffing plan and submitted to the Sheriff's Department, it was about 20 staff higher. My recommendation was for 71 staff, which reflected a direct supervision facility and some additional positions. This staffing plan will allow the Sheriff's Department to operate a safe and secure jail facility on opening for 240 inmates, or when they move into the full population of 240 inmates. But it does not reflect some of the patterns that we talk, direct supervision, where you have correctional officers in housing units absent any barriers from inmates. The jail facility has been programmed and will be designed to allow for that in the future, but certainly in terms of looking at staffing and the cost, because this is the total staff, and I'm going to show you the cost in a minute, some of those positions by the Sheriff's Department have made recommendations where we can make reductions, but I do want to say that my preliminary forecast for staffing for the facility was slightly higher than this. Now, how does that 50 staff translate to a cost? And for this, I show administration, security operations, which of course most of the staff is related to security operation and certainly correctional officers, based on $2,009, and this reflects current salary for staff in the jail, as well as a mid-level step C range for any new staff that would need to be hired, which is roughly 26 new staff positions. And then to that staff cost is added a 55% fringe benefit rate to account for all the stuff that you pay for as a county, the health care and all the other paid vacation and things like that. And what you can see here is the number comes to $3.5 million as it relates to the staff cost, which is the actual their salary and the fringe benefit. To that, I'd need to add a factor. So that's the $3.5 million. What you see below is that typically in a jail facility, 75% of the cost, the vast majority of the cost of running a jail is the personnel and the fringe benefit costs. But you still have to account for supplies, food, utilities, mattresses, all the other kinds of things you need to have to maintain a facility. And so when I add that 25% personnel operating costs, I come up with the non-personnel operating costs, and you currently have a quote for medical, to provide medical services for a 240-bed facility. So I added that in there. Now, when you get closer to opening, hopefully there could be some good negotiation for a 240-bed jail, but I wanted to put at least the current quote you have for that medical contract. And when that gets added in, the total annual estimated operating cost is $6.12 or $6.2 million, and that translates to a per diem cost of $70.59. And this assumes that you have 240 inmates. I divided that operating cost by 240 inmates, which you can see is a lower per diem cost than you currently have. Once again, your current per diem cost for the jail is $82. This would be a lower per diem cost, which would not be surprising because, of course, when you have a larger facility, you begin to achieve some economy of scale as opposed to a smaller 60 or 70 bed jail facility. But I wanted to show you how this stacked up against some national trends in staffing. And this table 9 at the top, because once again, facility staffing is going to vary by facility size. The smaller facilities are less staff efficient. The larger, big metropolitan jail facilities are going to be more staff efficient because there's more inmates to
And before you leave that last screen, if you would, you're saying basically, as I understand it, these are the costs of a couple of questions, just clarification questions. On the top display there, you have administration. You say 5 people, it's going to cost $527,620. It seems, are we really going to be having 5 people that we're paying over $100,000 a year to?
Oh, well, no, let's go back to the slide before, because this is an important point. This shows the actual administrative staff, and it's not what you're paying people. Once again, what I've done is taken the existing staff, what their current salary is, and their current fringe benefits. And for new staff, I took the step C, which is the mid-range, if you had to hire new people for those, and added 55% of that cost you're looking at is not their salary, but it's the fringe benefit rate, which is not uncommon when you talk about paying medical insurance, I mean, the things that you pay as a county. So,
well, the rule of thumb is that's been about 20% of the salary.
Well, supervisor, we've got depending on your bargaining status, can be in excess of 30% in retirement alone, plus additional for medical, plus vacation leave time. The total compensation package, I think, is probably much closer than 55%. And in future years, with steep increases expected in PERS, that number is going to get larger regardless of inflation and salaries and the rest of it. So I got to say, I think you're probably pretty much on target.
Right. Quite frankly, to answer that question, 2 years ago, if I was standing here making these presentations, I had used 40, 43%, 48 with medical costs, retirement, and people staying in jobs longer, and then some of that translates to additional fringe benefit. There are some jurisdictions where it's high now. 60.
Go to the next slide.
Real quick, but did you, the 55% figure, did you get that from our Human Resources Department? Did they provide that with you, or you used the...
What I did for that is I looked at your existing, all 24 positions that operate the jail, looked at developing an average there, because some actually are higher than that in terms of what their fringe benefit, and some are lower, and took an average of that to say current for this year's budget. By the way, this reflects $2,009, so if 2 or 3 years from now, or when you had a staffing estimate 2 years ago, it was slightly lower because each year, of course, with inflation, it goes up. That's how I got the 55%. I took an average of all current positions in the jail, specifically.
So it is based on our local...
Yes, exactly.
Good. Thank you.
Exactly.
A number that I don't see there is, basically, you're saying this is the cost of the new facility. What is basically the net cost for the new facility if you subtract out the cost for the old facility? In other words, what is the net new dollars that need to be allocated that aren't currently in the sheriff's budget for the new facilities? Because obviously we're paying a significant cost for the old facility.
Well, if you mean, what I'm looking at right now is I believe the current budget for the jail operation is $2.2 million.
Okay.
That's correct. A little bit higher, okay. So when I take that and do the $6.1 million, it's about a $4 million increase.
Okay.
To go from your roughly 72 inmates to 240 inmates. And that, once again...
In other words, to operate that, when this opens, if we had 240 beds in use,
right,
and there were compensation from other entities for those beds, the county would have to generate another $4 million in general fund revenue, or allocate another $4 million in general fund revenue. Is that correct?
Okay. Because I'm not making any assumptions.
Now, if we open this, and we have 2 pods of 40 each that are the dormitory, and then we have a main jail of 160. How are the operating costs affected at different levels of capacity? So if you have 130 people in there, do you have some breakout that's going to show us at different levels of capacity what the operating costs would be?
Well, if you move back the previous, right there. If you said, I think that's what you're asking, if you said, well, we need to go ahead and build it all, but one of those 40-bed dormitory units, we might not open it until 2015. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, or even the 160-bed facility. I mean, if we're paying, say, 2.2 now, is it, if we keep it to 140 filled beds that are general fund supported as opposed to outside entities, what is the net additional cost to the county of that?
Well, I could calculate that for you. I could decide, take out some of the staffing here. For example, if you weren't going to do the 248-bed units, I could back out 3.4 staff. But here's what I do: correctional officer staff. In other jurisdictions, if there's an issue about funding, typically what happens is you say, well, you might just wait to open one unit, but to say that you're going to operate the full facility and maybe only have, instead of having 48 inmates in a housing unit, 24, you're not really saving anything there. The only way you could really realize a savings, and it would be minimal, because once again, you still have to have someone cook the food, you still have to have someone in central control, you still have to have a couple of clerical positions. Many of those positions you still have to have, even if you only have 200.
It's mostly fixed costs, it's not variable costs, and regardless of capacity, is what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question about something you referred to earlier. This staffing pattern and the financial projections contemplate it's not a full direct supervision, it's an indirect supervision. This is a 50-person or 50-member staff. You said direct supervision would be a 70-person staff. The facility, however, is built, I understand it's being built as a direct supervision facility, so it has the capacity to go to that. If you weren't building a quote-unquote direct supervision facility, if you were building a facility that was meant to be operated with the kind of staffing that we're talking about here, would there be a significant difference in cost? Would there be a significant difference in layout? Or are we kind of building ourselves into a position where this will work for about 6 months, and all of a sudden this isn't good for operations? We're going to have to go. We're going to have to go to direct supervision and move toward that staffing level.
Well, let me think. I know how to answer that question. The facility design will be designed, the way the program is developed, you would still want to have. You aren't going to save anything by saying we will always be direct supervision, we will always be indirect. By that I mean that a housing control area that's looking into housing units is something you'd want to have even in a direct supervision facility because on the shift when they're in their rooms, locked rooms with the toilet sleeping, you don't need to have, typically in direct supervision facility, it's not uncommon to have an officer in a housing area looking into 2 housing units at that time of day when inmates, there is nobody in the day room. There's nobody participating in programs there. So having that ability for an officer to more efficiently look into 2 housing units is something you want to construct, and you'd see even in a direct supervision facility. However, on the shifts when the inmates are moving around, in here, that's your second and third shift, instead of having an officer in a housing unit looking into 2 housing units, typically in a direct supervision facility, you would have an officer in with the inmate population, with the 48 inmates, interacting absent any barriers on both sides. So instead of having one officer looking in but not interacting with inmates, which is one staff position, you would have 2. You would have 1 on each side. I'm giving the example. So the physical plant, this facility will reflect, the staffing plan is more efficient to begin with in indirect supervision, but you could easily decide that now on the second and third shift, we don't want somebody in this housing, we want an officer on the floor with the inmate population. And certainly all the national research would show the benefits for both staff and inmates to having a direct supervision facility and really enhancing the level of programming, other interaction that can take place in that sort of environment.
What would be, and this is probably an unfair question, but since you're standing there, I'll pose it. Indirect, direct supervision, what's the safest methodology for the staff? Where do the staff feel most comfortable? Where do the staff feel that they're safest? And which do they tend to prefer working in? What's a better working environment?
And that doesn't put me on the spot at all, because it's a very good question, and it's certainly in the national literature this can be revealed. Staff initially in many facilities that have gone from indirect to direct supervision facilities tend to be resistant, saying, well, I'm going to be in the middle of this floor with 48 or 64 or 72 inmates. But once they get in there, there's an absolute understanding of the increased level of safety for both their self personally as well as the other inmate population. So many studies have been done since direct supervision was first began in this country in the early 80s, and they all reflect that direct supervision is a preferred management model for staff as well as the inmate population feeling safer because they have an officer in there with them directly hearing and experiencing everything on the floor and not remotely supervising. That's not to say that facilities cannot be operated very safely with indirect supervision model, which they absolutely can. But the literature would show that the preferred model, and once again, especially when you talk about the personality and the issues that are bringing inmates into jails across America, this issue of direct supervision is a preferred management approach.
And one last follow-up then. If we went to the 70 people, went to the 70 staff, that $6.1 million would look more like how much, $8 million?
It would look more like exactly, when add it all in, additional staff costs would be about $1.2 million, and for a total of $7.7 million.
Okay,
and that specifically is 7 additional officers to make it direct supervision. I also recommended a couple of positions on here that have been taken off, such as housekeeping, custodian, and maintenance, because I would say that if you invest in a facility of this level and cost, that, when I suggested, once again, my staffing pattern, which is slightly higher, I did put in where you see programs and services. Right here it only says cooks, but I also suggested custodian and housekeeping specific to this new facility.
Yeah, because we're going to have custodial costs associated with it anyway.
But
they're going to be larger than... Okay, then maybe at some point you could give us your all-in on this so we could have a look at that. Okay, thanks.
Supervisor
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I was just going to chime in and agree with Karen based on the direct versus indirect supervision. I worked both, and I agree with everything she said. And I did not want to go to direct supervision where I was, but when I got into direct supervision, it was night and day as into inmate behavior. They took care of the housing units. Everything worked good. They were receptive to learning new things instead of just being caged somewhere, never talked to, never those types of things.
I mean, just like the largest concern then is, and certainly kind of based on what you said, Ed, is that we're going to be building a facility that would operate most effectively for the staff and for the inmates and for our long-term preservation of this capital asset, with a budget that's kind of over here. But we're not talking about that budget. What we're really talking about is a budget that gets us through it, and that's probably the one we would ultimately go with. But I just don't want us to lose sight of here's the good, here's the best, and this is what, people have in the back of their minds when they're designing this facility, when they're doing the analysis. They really all think we should be over here, but everybody's going to settle for being over there. That's all.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this is we're not tying our hands. We will be able to do a service to our citizens and to the inmates that come in.
Thanks.
I had a question about kind of startup costs. As I understand it, the hope is that some of the space ultimately will be rented out and it will have some offset. But there is a period, and I'm interested in how long that is and what the cost of it will be, wherein people have to be trained, new staff has to be trained before we actually open the facility up. What's the cost of that? How long does it last? And do we have to train all 26 new staff in that period, or are there some flexibilities in what would happen there?
Well, certainly all 26 new staff would have to go through the intensive training to make sure that this new facility is operating appropriately. Typically, when I've worked in jurisdictions, and I've been doing this for about 25 years, the transition activation process should be beginning right now, as it is here in Calaveras County. The meetings that we've been participating in have been with a group of, I believe the transition team is the title that's been given to the group of people working on this. So there's an understanding early on, and then as you get closer to the time, within typically 12 to 18 months of opening, that's when you begin the process of hiring, and then when you get closer to it, within the 4 to 6 month time frame, developing training. I did not put together a budget for that training. I can get back to you on that, a training budget, but I do not have that in this number.
Yeah, I understand. So, all right. I am interested in that cost, and
Okay.
I'm also interested in the estimated fiscal year in which that cost would be incurred.
Okay, I think the last slide that I had, so the training budget and the fiscal year for that training that needs to occur. So the 70, or the 50.1 staff that's being proposed and for the total $6 million annual operational cost, I wanted to show you a comparison of how that stacks up to some national averages. So the top table takes a look at, for every one inmate, how many staff there are, total staff, that would be from administration to cooks and everything. And the second column says for every one inmate, how many correctional officers are there. So if we look at the 50 to 240 bed range, if you develop a staffing plan for a 240 bed facility, you would be looking at about 3 staff, 2.7 total staff for every one inmate for total staff. And as it relates to correctional officers, for one staff person, there would be 3.9 correctional officers. And this means we add up all the staffing plan. You add up everything and all the shift relief and all of that. The proposed 50.1 staff here in Calaveras County, in this, once again, the 50 to 249 bed range, this staffing plan reflects that for one inmate, one staff position, there will be 4.79 inmates, and for correctional officers, for one correctional officer, the ratio of the 240 inmates will be 7.06. So you see that there's many more inmates under a 50-person staff, or a 50 staffing plan, that will be supervised compared to some of the national comparative.
And if you were at 70 rather than 50, would you be closer?
Then you'd be at 1.33, so you'd be following, really tracking in with closer to the national average. In other words, the total staffing plan for what I had proposed, the 71 total staff for 240 inmates, that means for one staff, there are 3.3 inmates. So you'd be right, once again, even a little bit more efficient than national average. But I think it's important to look at, once again, as staggering as saying 26 additional positions, the total staffing plan is still vastly more efficient than when we compare it nationally. And that has to do with, once again, taking out some of those correctional officers if it wasn't going to start as direct supervision, and also some of the other positions like custodial and housekeeping. Any other questions on that, or should I turn it over to Jerry for
Any other direct questions?
Good morning. My name is Jerry Guerrero. I'm with PSA Dewberry. I just want to give the board a little update now that we've come to the program and the square footage of the building, just give you kind of some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with now as we start developing concepts for the building and the site. It's a very beautiful site, but these are really 9 key issues now that we'll be dealing with as we move into the conceptuals. The understanding of the separation of the buildings because of the different funding sources, AB 900, Measure J. The topography of the site, there's some big slopes to the site, to the 12 acres that we have. The trees, the mitigation of the trees, the archaeological site, the wetlands. So there's those type of issues. Also access points that we'll be dealing with, fire access that we'll have to get around our side as well as the project for the AOC. Vehicular movement and parking, public movement versus staff movement, and making sure that's safe and secure for both. And then how we interact with the current courts project that's going on, and access for public and staff transfer to the courthouse and the jail. So as we move forward with the design that we'll be presenting later, as Art explained, these are a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now, just so you're aware of those. Again, it's a beautiful site, but there are a lot of key issues that we need to think about as we move forward with the design.
I hope we informed you how you wanted to be informed of May, when you asked us in May to give you a study session on staffing. We're moving forward to complete this project the best possible way we can with the needs of our citizens in mind, and our citizens are also those people that are in custody, and we need to, as a county, start ensuring that we help them recover. And that's what our goal is, and that's what our mission statement is. And if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer anything.
I have one, Captain Ballard. That, in order to qualify for the AB 900 funds, this county had to take part in that transition facility down in Stockton. This may have been answered before, but I don't remember whether we anticipate having any annual costs to this county associated with that facility.
There is no anticipation that will happen. There are avenues. We were working towards trying to define answers to those, and hopefully we would have maybe been able to, at the time we were trying to seek those answers, get funding from the state for rehabilitative needs for people that come out of that reentry facility to our county. Unfortunately, the budget come along, and we haven't had another executive steering committee, so I cannot provide you with that answer, but it was looking more like there wouldn't be any costs associated, and hopefully we'd be able to get from the state. But that's where it was left off.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. I'd just like to point out a couple of things. One is the 160-bed facility, according to our needs assessment, should take us out to around 2015 or 2016. Steve, I think you had a good point that our population growth that it was out of sight for a number of years has slowed to some extent, and that potentially could push us out a little further. That 160 beds is what we absolutely have to commit to staffing and operating on the county's dime. The 80 beds, if we were to open that according to the needs assessment, would take the county out to 2025 or 2030. If we can't get the leases, which right now the state's more than willing to lease anything that comes by, if we can't get the leases, I don't think this board or us should consider opening that 80 beds. I think we have an obligation. We have a one-time shot. I mean, back in '99 when we applied for jail funding, we were going to build a 99-bed facility for $12 million. We couldn't do it. So we see what the increases are. I think if we have the money, we need to build it. If we can't open those 80 beds, then the staff equation needs to be taken out of that. If we can get the leases, The leases could potentially bring us a couple $1 million a year, which would help the overall scheme of things significantly. And I think we need to keep that in mind. I mean, we always talk about 240 beds, and we need to continue talking about that, but we have to keep it in the back of our mind that right now we're talking about staffing at 160 beds, so things could come down a bit. The other thing is Dennis Huberty has been doing some research, and we may be able to drop those medical costs significantly. There seems to be some way you can operate a facility over 99 beds with only having 12 to 16 hour a day coverage, where we have consistently been looking at 24 hour a day.
Could you speak up, please, Sheriff?
I don't know where you quit hearing me.
I don't know when you started saying that it was going to cost us less money, and then your voice dropped.
Yeah, that's when you woke up, right?
Yeah.
No, Dennis Huberty has been doing some research, and there may be a way that we can operate a 160-bed or 240-bed facility with 12 to 16-hour-a-day medical coverage rather than the 24-hour-a-day coverage that we've been doing. That would drop that cost. Those projected costs on the medical are based on what we're paying now. We know the negotiations are going to go, it's going to be cheaper than that. But if we can, in fact, go to 12 to 16 hours instead of 24, I mean, that takes a big bite out of it. So some of these costs could come down. But the main thing I want to say is we really need to stay focused on that 160, and then it's up to us or collectively here to figure out how we can generate the revenue off those other 80 beds.
Any other questions of the sheriff? No.
I have a question of the young lady, if I may.
Okay.
If we did operate, at least initially, just the 160-bed facility, so we met the criteria for the state funds, et cetera, how much would that cost in additional money versus the $2.2 million we're currently spending on the current jail facility?
Well, if you could go back to the slide, I'd have to calculate it. But if you look down here where it says this, the correctional staff for the 240-bed housing, 240-bed dormitory units, which I believe is 3.4 staff, I could back that out, and that would be staff that you would not, I mean, you wouldn't be able to save on the rest of the staff because you're still operating a 160-bed jail once again. So I could back out the, 4 correctional.
It would be nice to know just what the incremental cost would be on a 160-bed facility.
Right, and I'll develop
versus
that.
the 240.
But once again, it's going to be a very small savings because basically I will not be able to back out those other positions. I will simply be backing out, I believe it's, my eyesight's not 3.4.
Right. Would it be safe to say that it would save maybe $200,000, $300,000?
Right, on an average.
You have operating costs too, things like that.
Right, and so roughly between salary and fringe benefits, it's in the neighborhood of $300,000, and then it's some additional for the, and you wouldn't be paying utilities or buying mattresses and food for that population. So I want to give you the exact number, but it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of, $400,000 to $500,000.
All right, so we look at $4 million for the 240 and 3.5 roughly, give or take.
I'm just trying to remember. We looked at some figures earlier last year, and at 160 beds, it would have been about a $2 million increase from the current jail. And then if we built 260, it would have been like a $3.6 million. That was like a $1.5 million spread, but it sounds like what you're describing is a much narrower.
Well, you're actually, when you had the 160 bed would have gone to 4.2 million, and then the going to 240 bed would be 5.8 million, but that was done 2 years ago. My numbers are slightly, instead of being the 5.8 million, it's about the 6.2.
But the difference, what I thought I heard you say before was that the difference, there was a much narrower difference between 160 and 240 beds. I thought I heard a number here that was about $500,000, difference in cost. But what we had before was a difference of over $1 million. I'm just trying to get a handle on making sure I'm, in my mind, comparing apples with apples. So,
when you include in the extra 80 people for the medical contract,
Right. So that's still the case then, where you still have to factor that in, would be the medical. So it's not 500,000, it's still closer to the 1.something million.
I would need to actually calculate the number, and I will do that for you.
Because we need total cost as well as just the personnel.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And if we built the 240 but just didn't open the 240-bed pods, then you could give us a cost. I mean, the carrying cost of an empty pod isn't going to be very great, I'm assuming.
I'm sorry, the what?
The carrying cost of an empty pod is not going to be very great.
Right. I mean, you're not going to save $2 million. I mean, I'll run the exact numbers.
Well, I have you up there. Let me just ask one.
It's 3.4 positions, and I'll then factor in the medical and all. Okay.
It sounds like, as a bare bones minimum, from your comments, we would need to raise an additional $4 million in general fund contribution, all else equal, in the sheriff's department. But you're saying is that though at 50 positions we have the indirect monitoring, and that over time, and all the testimony that's been presented says the direct monitoring is much more effective, and that's 75 positions. So if we went...
That's the 50.1.
No,
71 staff altogether, but 50.1 additional.
Indirect is 50.1, direct is 70.
Well, it was 70.
But I want to clarify that, as I said, I submitted a staffing plan initially for 71 total positions, which was direct. Of that, 20 over what we're showing. Most of that, 7 of that was correctional officers that would have been assigned to direct supervision. But as I also mentioned, I proposed a few additional positions in other areas like custodial.
If we were looking at the direct, which, and I can easily see some court directing us to go there if, in fact, the indirect or the direct is so much more advantageous for the control of the prisoners. And we added the positions that you recommended that were taken out, then what would the additional cost be?
So for the total 20 additional positions, are you asking? Yes. Okay, the 20 total additional positions.
And the ones used, I think there were some that were correctional and there were some that not.
Service, and when it's all added up.
What you as a consultant would recommend as the optimum staffing, what would that cost, additional cost over the $4 million be?
Over go back to the total staff or total cost slide, or I'm sorry, it's forward. What I'm saying, the total annual operating cost for the 50 positions is $6.2 million.
Right.
If you were going to have 70 positions, which would then incorporate some of the other areas mostly, but 7 additional correctional officers for direct supervision, that number there would be $7.7 million for those 20 additional positions and the...
What are we right now? 6 point something.
6.184.
So it would go up another $1.5 million.
Yes, that's for 20 positions, which is the salary, the fringe benefits, and the associated non-personnel operating costs.
So then we'd be at $5.5 million. That's what I thought. I thought we were talking somewhere between $5 and $6 million if we ended up.
But to answer you specifically, though, if you just wanted to know what's associated with 7 correctional officers to implement direct supervision on opening day, then that cost would be taken. I mean, that would be an additional $1.1 million of staffing and operational costs. In other words, that the 7.7 that I'm talking about is if you added all 20 additional positions.
I'm just amazed that we can only. It takes one correctional officer to supervise 4 or 5 inmates. I mean. That kind of a staffing ratio, I mean, good grief. I mean, that's so expensive.
Yeah, no, that's the important point. What I'm talking about there is that, because the way the staffing plan is directed right now is one correctional officer will be observing 96 inmates on the floor. Go back to the shift, the 3 shifts. I'm sorry. On the staffing plan, it goes the other way.
The total number of staff divided by the amount of prisoners equals what, 4 to 5.
Yeah. Right, because, for example, when I say...
What's the total number of staff?
Right, but once again, when I say one correctional officer position, you have to hire 5.1 people. Because if I say one correctional officer is going to be in this control room, I have to hire 5.1 people because someone must always be sitting in that control room booth 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and people get vacations and bereavement, military leave, whatever. So you have to. So when I say this is a staff position of a correctional officer, you have to go and hire 5 people, 5.1 actually. That's why I'm showing the shift relief, because you can't just say in a housing unit. So what I'm saying. If you wanted to know on a daily basis, the staffing plan says that if you have 2 48-bed housing units, And with indirect supervision, there's going to be somebody, a correctional officer in the middle, observing 98 inmates on all 3 shifts. But when I add up all, I'm just, that last comparative table.
Staff divided by the number of prisoners, it gives you...
Right. So that's not to say that one correctional officer, that would be a good staffing plan, wouldn't it? That would be a very good staffing plan.
Could we take a look at those ratios? You have the table with the ratios.
I'm sorry, that's towards the end of the last.
That's it. I mean, that's really kind of what Supervisor Tryon was talking about.
Right. I mean, that would indicate that it's, for our size facility, we're going to have 1 correctional officer for every 5 inmates. But you're saying,
No, the first
I
one is,
understand what you're
That's on
saying.
the right-hand side. It's actually 7.06.
right, that's for correctional officers. The first one is just total staff. That's the bureau commander, the cooks, all total staff.
Right. It's the 5 to 1.
Right. In other words, at a 240-bed jail, and you're proposing 50.1 staff, that means that for every 1 staff position, there's going to be 4.79 inmates, which is almost double what it should be. In other words, if you look national trends, once again, that you'd be closer to the 70 to 75 staffing pattern if you were going to, track along with national.
So we're talking. I want to be clear. It's per actual correctional officer on staff, not the number of correctional officers per shift. Because remember we talked.
Right.
About,
Exactly.
Right. So it's live bodies. It's live bodies on staff,
total
not
hires.
merely allocated.
Exactly. Where you add up all the correctional officers that are hired, the shift. I mean, that's total correctional officers.
I just looking at that from 3.9, which is the national. Is that an average or is that a recommendation?
No, it's an average. It was a survey that,
Where does it say what is the national average?
That's the blue ones. That's up on top.
That's the national average?
National average is on top.
Census of survey of jails.
From the feds. And okay, let me ask you: does the difference between 3.9 and 7.06 reflect different methodologies? That other. Are we looking at? Are we using the proper comparison, or is our staffing pattern really something that is an issue, or is that it was a reflection of methodology?
Well, once again, if the 20 additional positions that were recommended, my first draft of the 70 staff, you would have had such things as a full-time custodian assigned to the jail and sheriff's admin ASA, a housekeeping and maintenance person assigned to that, 7 additional positions to operate direct supervision, which is pretty much, as new facilities are being built, because of so much literature, they are being operated as direct supervision facilities. So if you had those, I guess I'm trying to make the point with this slide is that the 50 staff you're hiring, the sheriff's department certainly will operate a safe and secure jail. If you were going to go with trends and look at nationally what people are doing in jails, even from some of the program staff. I had a program coordinator, for example, someone that would help get the NA and AA other programs in, which the jail is doing now, but they're doing it through volunteer and stuff. So I'm saying if those positions were hired, you would be at the 71 staff that I recommended, and then you would be more in line with what a survey of jail facilities reflect in terms of what's an appropriate staffing pattern. Because you're going to operate, at least initially, and indirect and try to save those staff positions, that's why you're seeing that you're going to have many more inmates to staff, because, once again...
So what you're talking about is your recommendations are consistent with your initial recommendations. Yes. Your first draft are consistent with the national trends. Yes. That wouldn't have put us outside that. These subsequent ones, the revised ones, put us at 7.06. If those are national, I won't say standards, but they're national averages, not standards.
Exactly.
I mean, do we subject ourselves to some point to finding ourselves in court where a judge is going to say, that's not going to work. You're going to have to go. You have to raise your staffing levels. You have to do this because that's what everybody else is doing. Are we looking at? We're not looking at any kind of equal protection issues. Then
no. I mean, there's certainly everything that will be reflected in the program and the final design complies with California standards, American Correctional Association standards for space.
Okay, so we're fine.
And certainly the sheriff's department has a record of operating a safe and secure jail facility, which they will do at a new jail facility. Mm-hmm. I know that the issue of operational costs is staggering because it goes on and on even after the $56 million. I'm trying to make the point to this elected body that the Sheriff's Department, and looking through it as we've gone through these workshops, has tried to develop the most efficient staffing plan possible. In the future, as you move towards implementation, the jails open, certainly it would be recommended that some of these additional positions to be able to implement direct supervision as well as some program and services full-time in the jail and as well as some custodian maintenance staff full-time in the jail.
I have a question. Can we put together a statewide profile instead of a national profile?
I mean, if California jails,
Yes, California jails.
I can do...
With a graph just like you have here?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, similar size, because it wouldn't, I mean, comparing your jail to Los Angeles or something like that, I'll try to find some similar size. Those same counties that I... Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
More than what was on the other slide, because there was already 4 or 5 comparing.
I didn't. Well, I didn't have the total staffing plan, but
She didn't have, yes.
but the per diem cost, which incorporates that, will still show that that's for currently Calaveras County, and they're $82 per day.
But it did not show total inmates for staff ratios that you have here on those other 5.
No, it showed the cost, per
It
diem
showed the
cost.
cost.
I can get the staffing number and show you that comparison.
Okay, any other questions of Karen? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Macedo, did you have a comment? No? Okay. All right. The chair would like to take about a 5-minute break here and let these people take their equipment down. Thank you.
Believe it or not.
Should be one, but there's
Tube type of thing. There we go. Okay, once again, we are returning to our session. We are at item number 14, and this is a discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of an applicant to serve on the Mental Health Board. We have the staff report here. The person whose name is being presented is Kathleen McConaughey.
I move that we accept Kathleen McConaughey and appoint her to the Mental Health Board.
I second it.
Okay.
A good addition to the group.
All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Walensky.
I have discovered that we have an omission from today's agenda. Supervisor Tryon had requested, and we had agreed to have a meeting discussing the union contract negotiations and the economics of that, and that was to be in a closed session, which is not listed for this meeting. Given the timely nature of this, I believe we would need to hold that discussion today before we get into budget hearings next week. And my hope is that we can, I believe it would require a 4/5 vote to set this for today's agenda, and I so move.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded for putting a closed session on this afternoon for the purpose of discussing wage considerations for prior to next week.
Actually, it was a broader. It was the economic implications of the negotiations, the status report, and an effort to gain a full understanding of the economic impacts before we go into the budget hearing.
Talk to the union further.
All right. You heard the motion and the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. On item 15, we have review of correspondence and reports, starting with Supervisor Tryon.
Wednesday and Thursday, I'll be in Yuba City for a regional council of rural counties meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Walensky.
I have the Calaveras-Amador McCullough River Association meeting of the CCWD tomorrow morning. I have I have a presentation to the AARP at noon. I have the Amador Fire Safe Council in Amador County at the airport on that evening as well, Wednesday. We have the BLM U.S. Forest Service Fish and Game, the Hayfork group that's working on forest issues, as well as the Nature Conservancy coming to District 2 to review the state of the forest and proposals to have a joint BLM U.S. Forest Service acceleration of forest treatments in watershed and forest restoration, as well as fire-safe work. That will be an all-day tour starting in Glencoe at 8 a.m. We also have on Monday, and this is getting a little complicated, I'd like to see whether we can reconcile some scheduling conflicts. We have the the Joint Powers Family Support meeting in Calaveras at 1 p.m. on Monday. We have budget hearings, which I had down for 9 to noon, but is that going to last longer than noon?
It is meant not to. It will be adjourned at noon.
So we will be able to attend that.
Yeah.
And then on Wednesday, we had scheduled the housing element workshop from 9:30 to noon in the Chesbrough room, but we may also be in budget hearings at the same time.
Unless you finish on Tuesday, I think that we'll have to work around that.
All right. I'm hoping to be able to attend the housing thing. I think we did make some.
So we can go on 9:30. We'll hold the meeting in abeyance
until that's okay. That'd be great.
Because you've got.
I can talk about it at the time, but I didn't want to stand them up after having committed to it.
Well, I committed too.
Yeah, you're both going to be there.
All right. I was just asking that. Thank you very much.
Can I get a clarification on that? The housing element meeting in Chesbrough is scheduled to start at what time?
9:30.
It's not a housing element meeting.
Okay.
The housing element meeting was held this week.
Okay. So
this is just an educational issue on affordable housing. It is not the housing element.
That's not the housing element. All right. Well,
housing element was last Wednesday.
Also on the conflict. All right. That's all I have to report.
Okay, but still there was some discussion there about postponing for some time.
Why don't we see how it goes on Tuesday, and we'll determine from there what we do.
Okay. All right, Supervisor Toffenelli.
I also have the Calaveras Amador Macomb River Authority meeting at 10 o'clock on Wednesday at CCWD. Also at 1 o'clock, a Cosgrove Creek meeting at CCWD Board Room. It's on Wednesday. Also that night I'll be at the ABA dinner at the Vets Hall for Valley Springs, ABA. I have a town hall meeting scheduled for 6 to 8 on Friday night at the Vets Hall. That's concerning Cosgrove Creek and any other related matters. That's all I have to report.
Okay, Supervisor Callaway.
I do not have any board-appointed meetings, but I will be going to the Visitors Bureau function on the 18th and the fundraiser for Common Ground on the 19th.
Okay, the Visitors Bureau, that's the Supervisor Callaway, that Visitors Bureau function, that's the their annual thing.
No, that's the
well, it's their annual program where they go to different sites.
Correct.
This particular one is where I'm trying
Irish
to
Vineyards in Vallecito.
All right. I'm surprised that no one has mentioned the marching bands that are going to be at the San Andreas Sanitary District groundbreaking on Wednesday morning at 10.
On the 17th.
Got that.
I have a CSAC conference call on the highways and users tax on the 17th. So
Okay, at that same time.
Yeah, it's at 9. I don't know if it'll be over by then.
Okay, well, I may be
Thank you.
the only representative there, but I also will be joining Supervisor Toffenelli on Friday night at the Town Hall session in Valley Springs, at the Valley Springs Vet Hall. It starts at 6 o'clock. Let's see what else. I think that concludes my board-appointed responsibilities. However, I would like to announce a kind of a very sad event that I just learned about a few moments ago. Lynn Reed, who is a resident of Copperopolis, just came in to inform me that Bill Albee, if you remember, he came just 2 months ago to present the Calaveras, or the Copperopolis Community Plan. He had a stroke on the next day. I mean, he was here on a Tuesday, had a stroke on the next day. He unfortunately succumbed to some metastasized cancer in his brain this morning. So, anyway, I really am going to miss my friend Bill. He was a very, very dear friend. And I know that all of you knew what he was doing for us in the county. So. Okay, we are going into a closed session at this point. This is pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, anticipated litigation. So can we shut down the TV cameras? Okay.